You can spend years loving someone and still wake up one day feeling like a stranger in your own marriage. That's what happened to me. My name is Emily, and I've been married to Ethan for 7 years. We met in college, moved in after graduation, and thought we had it all figured out. Ethan was kind, ambitious, steady, everything I thought I wanted in a man. And I was in love with him. Deeply. But lately I feel invisible. It didn't happen all at once. At first, I thought we were just going through a phase. We were both working a lot, barely had time for a proper dinner, let alone anything intimate. But then the silence between us stopped feeling temporary. It started feeling permanent. He stopped touching me. Not even accidental brushes of the hand anymore. He barely looked at me. No compliments. No flirting. Just this emptiness. And I kept asking myself, is it me? Am I not attractive anymore? Too tired, too boring, too predictable. One night, I finally worked up the courage to ask him directly. We were sitting on opposite ends of the couch. I turned off the TV and said, "Ethan, do you still find me attractive?" He blinked, caught off guard. Then he looked down and said, "I'm just tired, Em. It's not you. I'm under a lot of pressure at work." That was his answer. The same one he'd heard for months. He kissed me on the forehead and went to bed early. I stood in the kitchen that night, just staring out the window, feeling like I was watching my own life from the outside. But that wasn't the worst of it. The worst was how alone I started to feel even with him in the same room. And then came Logan. Logan is Ethan's younger brother. He's for years younger, more relaxed, more spontaneous. The kind of guy who could charm anyone at a dinner party without trying. He'd always been a little bit reckless, moving from one job to another, one girlfriend to the next. Ethan always saw him as the irresponsible one. But I'd always liked Logan. In a friendly way. After a tough breakup, Logan asked if he could stay with us for a while. Just a few weeks, he said, until he found his own place. Ethan wasn't thrilled about it, but I thought it might bring some life back into the house. I didn't expect what came next. At first, Logan kept to himself. He stayed in the guest room, helped with dishes, made jokes during dinner that actually made me laugh, something I hadn't done in a while. I appreciated his energy. His presence made the house feel less cold. Then, one evening, something shifted. Ethan had to stay late at work. It was just me and Logan at home. I made spaghetti, poured 2 glasses of wine, and we sat at the table talking. He told me about his ex, how she made him feel like he wasn't enough. And then he said something that caught me completely off guard. He looked at me and said, "I can't understand how someone could be around you every day and not want to touch you." I froze. The room went completely still. I thought I misheard him, but he didn't take it back. He just looked at me like he'd said something obvious. Natural. I told him that was inappropriate, that he shouldn't say things like that. He apologized, sort of. He said he didn't mean to cross a line, that he just wanted to remind me I was still seen. I didn't tell Ethan. Part of me didn't want to create drama between brothers. Another part was afraid of what it meant that Logan had noticed what Ethan hadn't in months. But I should have told him, because that was just the beginning. I wanted to pretend nothing happened. The next morning, I avoided Logan. I stayed busy, took longer showers, left early for errands, pretended to scroll through my phone at breakfast just to avoid eye contact. But Logan acted like nothing had happened, like he hadn't said anything strange the night before. He even joked about my overcooked pasta from dinner, as if we were just regular housemates, not people sharing a secret tension. And maybe that was the most dangerous part, because the more he acted normal, the more I started to feel crazy. I told myself it was just a moment, a slip. People say stupid things when they're hurt. He was reeling from a breakup. He was vulnerable. I shouldn't read into it. But the truth was, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I couldn't stop thinking about how he looked at me, like he saw me. Not as Ethan's wife. Not as just a woman doing laundry or paying bills. But as someone who still mattered. And that made me angry. Not at Logan, at Ethan. Because my husband hadn't looked at me like that in months. That weekend, we hosted a small family dinner. Ethan invited his parents. Logan was there, of course. We grilled in the backyard, drank wine, laughed at old childhood stories. It should felt warm, easy. But every time I looked at Ethan, he was either glued to his phone or talking about work. At one point, I was standing at the kitchen sink, wiping my hands, and I felt a pair of eyes on me. I turned, and Logan was watching from across the room. He smiled slightly, then turned away before anyone noticed. Later that night, after everyone left, I tried again. I sat on the bed beside Ethan and asked, "Do you still love me?" He looked at me, puzzled. "Of course I do." "Then why don't you look at me like you used to?" He sighed. That heavy, tired sigh that men give when they don't want to be asked questions they can't answer. "I just have a lot on my mind," he said. "You're overthinking again." That word, again, it hit me hard. Like I was the problem. Like my loneliness was a burden. Like my desire to feel close to my husband was just emotional noise he didn't have the bandwidth for. I went to sleep with my back to him that night. And when I woke up, he was already gone. And Logan had made coffee. For both of us. He handed me a mug, didn't say much. Just nodded. But the silence between us wasn't awkward anymore. It was electric. Later that week, I caught a cold. Nothing serious. Just one of those miserable, low-energy days. Ethan didn't notice. Or if he did, he didn't ask. But Logan did. He brought me tea. Left a note on the tray, "Rest. The world can wait." It was silly. It was sweet. And it made me cry. I realized something then. It wasn't that Logan was seducing me. It was that Ethan had already let me go. And someone else was just paying attention to the pieces left behind. And that terrified me. Because I didn't know how much longer I could pretend that wasn't true. The more I tried to deny what was happening, the more undeniable it became. There was a moment, one that still replays in my mind, that changed everything. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't scandalous. It was simple. I came home early from work one day. Ethan was supposed to be working from home. Instead, I found him asleep on the couch with his laptop closed, TV playing in the background, and dirty dishes sitting on the coffee table. When I gently woke him and asked if everything was okay, he mumbled, "Just tired," and went back to sleep. No kiss, no smile, no curiosity about my day. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. And I realized something awful. I was lonelier with him than I'd ever been alone. The next morning, Logan found me crying on the front porch. I didn't mean for it to happen. I didn't want him to see me like that. He sat down beside me in silence. No questions. Just offered a blanket and handed me my coffee. After a few minutes, he spoke softly. "You know," he said, "when I was a kid, I used to think Ethan was perfect, like the golden one. But now, I see how much you give and how little you get back." I didn't respond. He continued, "You deserve more than to feel like you're not wanted." I looked at him. For the first time, I really looked at him, and he wasn't just Ethan's younger brother. He was a man who saw me, listened to me, noticed the little things no one else had. But I couldn't let myself fall into that. So I stood up and said, "You need to stop saying things like that, Logan. It's not fair." And he nodded, but he didn't look sorry. Over the next few days, things became strange. Ethan grew distant, almost suspicious. He started asking me things like, "Did Logan say anything weird to you? Or have you noticed him acting strange?" I didn't know what to say. I couldn't tell him the truth, because I didn't know what the truth was anymore. Was Logan crossing a line? Or was he just noticing the cracks that Ethan refused to see? Then came the moment that changed everything. I was folding laundry upstairs. One of Ethan's dress shirts had lipstick on the collar. It wasn't mine. I stood there frozen, holding the fabric between my fingers, heart pounding. I didn't scream. I didn't storm into the room. I just stared at it. And that's when Logan walked in. He saw the shirt in my hands. He didn't ask. He didn't need to. Instead, he whispered, "I'm sorry, Em. You don't deserve this." I don't know how long we stood there in silence. But something in me snapped, not from anger, but from clarity. Ethan wasn't just emotionally gone. He had been gone long before I realized. And suddenly, Logan's presence made too much sense. His words, his attention, his protectiveness, it all clicked. But it also terrified me. Because I still wore Ethan's ring. I still signed paperwork with his last name. I still remembered the man he used to be. So I did nothing. I put the shirt in a bag and hid it. And Logan, he didn't bring it up again. But from that day forward, I knew everything between the three of us had changed. After I found the lipstick-stained shirt, something shifted inside me, not just emotionally, but physically. It was like my body no longer recognized my own home. Everything looked familiar, but nothing felt safe. I didn't confront Ethan. I told myself it wasn't the right moment. But the truth is I was afraid. Not of him, but of what admitting the truth would mean. That we were done. That all these years had led to this. Silence, betrayal, and a man who didn't want me anymore. In the days that followed, I observed him. Ethan was trying harder. He started bringing flowers again, asking how my day was, showing up for dinner. But it all felt rehearsed, like he was covering tracks. Meanwhile, Logan had withdrawn. He wasn't joking around anymore. He stopped joining us for meals. He spent more time at the gym or out on walks. When I'd pass him in the hallway, he'd nod, offer a half smile, and keep walking. It hurt, because as confusing as our dynamic had become, Logan had been the only person who made me feel seen in months. And now, even that small comfort was fading. One evening, Ethan surprised me with a dinner reservation. He said he wanted to reconnect. I almost laughed. But I agreed, out of guilt, out of duty, out of a tiny sliver of hope. At the restaurant, he poured me wine, complimented my dress, and made surface-level conversation. I sat there pretending to smile, pretending not to remember the lipstick on that shirt tucked away in my closet. Then he asked me, "Have you felt distant lately?" I looked at him, unsure if he was being genuine or trying to get ahead of something. Before I could answer, he leaned forward and added, "Is it about Logan?" My heart stopped. "What?" I asked. He didn't accuse. He didn't shout. He just said, "I know he looks at you. I've seen it. And I know you've noticed." I stared at him, stunned. But then he said something I'll never forget. He looked at me with the calmness of a man who had made peace with his own betrayal and whispered, "If you want out, Emily, just say it. I won't fight you. I can't love you the way he does." I didn't cry. I didn't storm off. I just sat there and nodded. That night, I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling again, but this time with clarity. Ethan had let go of me a long time ago, and now he was offering me a way out, without even asking if there was something to hold on to. Logan came home late that night. I was sitting at the kitchen table in my robe, sipping cold tea. He looked exhausted. When he saw me, he paused, then quietly asked, "Did he tell you?" I nodded. "He knows." We didn't say much else, just stood there in silence. And then Logan said something I didn't expect. "I'm leaving tomorrow." "What?" I asked, confused. He looked down. "I shouldn't be here, Em. Not like this." I never wanted to cause a wedge, but I think I already did. "Why are you running?" I asked him. He looked at me, his eyes soft. "Because if I stay, I'm afraid he'll say something I can't take back." He turned and walked away. I sat alone in the kitchen until sunrise. Because no matter how much truth had surfaced, the hardest part wasn't deciding what to do. It was admitting I had already made my choice. I thought the worst was behind us. We had survived her confession, my heartbreak, and somehow we still stood together. But there was one thing I hadn't seen coming. Something that had been right in front of me all along, hidden beneath my pride and her silence. A week after we decided to give our marriage another chance, I found a box tucked away in the back of the closet. It wasn't labelled, just a plain brown cardboard thing, half buried under winter coats. Curiosity got the best of me. Inside were old letters. Dozens of them. They weren't mine. They were from him. Each one signed by the same man who had slept with my wife, the man who claimed to love her before she ever married me. His handwriting was unmistakable. But what struck me most was the tone. It wasn't just lust. It was devotion. The kind of devotion I thought she only reserved for me. I didn't confront her that night. I sat in the garage for hours, reading those letters. Some dated back to the very first year of our marriage. Others were as recent as a few months ago. He wrote to her even after I found out. And she kept them. Why? I could barely look at her the next morning. My eyes betrayed me. They were swollen from the lack of sleep and the weight of betrayal. She noticed, but she didn't ask. Or maybe she knew. Finally, I asked, Did you love him more than you ever loved me? She didn't answer right away, and that silence was more painful than a yes or no. I loved you differently, she said. With him, it was something reckless, something tied to the past. With you, it was safety, stability, a future, but not passion, I replied. She shook her head, tears brimming in her eyes. Not the kind you chase, not the kind you destroy your life for. That's when I realized I had built a marriage on the idea that love should be safe, predictable. But she had always wanted fire, even if it burned. I walked out that night, not because I hated her, not because I couldn't forgive her again, but because I finally understood that I had always been second in her heart, a backup plan when her real love didn't work out. One didn't sign the divorce papers for months. I thought maybe she'd fight for me, prove me wrong. She never did. She moved out quietly. No grand goodbye, no desperate apologies. And I kept the box of letters, not to hurt myself, but to remind myself that sometimes, even the people who say they love you are capable of loving someone else just a little bit more. Have you ever felt like someone kept you around just because you were the safe choice, not the one they truly loved? Let me know your thoughts in the comments.